There are two here. I wouldn't call them mansions. This kind of rancher here is the original house. It was bought by the same person who bought the second big house there, owned by the same person. They're both empty except maybe for a visit once a year for a week or so in the nicer house, the taller house. I go back to 2013 when the Finn Road farm around the corner here was the target of dumping by a couple of operators who said that the farmland was unfarmable. Actually, it had been farmed for generations with all kinds of vegetables that you can eat, but they said, no, it can't be farmed anymore. It has to be a tree farm. Class 1 soil. They had an agrologist state that it was less than that. It was like Class 5 soil. And the whole project started of filling in this large farm with fill to make a tree farm possible. And then partway through, a bunch of local farmers and residents said, hey, wait a minute, what you're dumping in there is demolition waste. It came in the big demolition trucks straight from the demolition site to that farm. And they were throwing it in, and they started constructing what they called a farm road, which was like a 30-foot wide road full of concrete, rebar, rubble, straight from the demolition trucks. And everybody was so worried about that, the farmers were really concerned. They started a protest at the gate of that farm, and in fact it got a lot of news coverage. It was quite controversial. They were trying to block the demolition trucks from going in, and they counted all the demolition trucks that dumped there. And at this blockade, they set up a little cabin, a little temporary hut that they stayed in all night, every night, for several months. And during all of that, the farmers wrote to the ALC rather, and said, you know, what's going on? We're farmers, we're concerned, is this all right? The ALC never answered the farmers or all the people who wrote letters. Not a word came back. And in fact, the city didn't say much, but mysteriously, about 5 months into the dumping project, it just stopped. The dumping completely stopped. No one's told us why. And in the meantime, the city set up a soils bylaw. They instituted a soils bylaw, and they eventually hired a soils bylaw officer whose job was to go around and prevent dumping on farmland. And eventually, I would say about 2015, it started getting farmed again on both sides of the road. There were crops of corn growing nicely. And the road sat there until just last fall, 2017, when mysteriously, suddenly, was there a project to clean up the farm. And of course, the local farmer said, that's only a good thing. It was our victory. Somehow, they persuaded the owners of this land to clean it up. And it was a really big cleanup project, all kinds of really expensive screening equipment, 3 or 4 earth movers, many trucks, and it went on for several weeks. No one tells us anything, but we estimated it was about a $500,000 cleanup job. Who paid and why? What's the quid pro quo? Why did they clean this thing up after originally the ALC denied that it was even a problem? The ALC approved it in the first place. Suddenly everything's changed. It's cleaned up now. You'll see they've planted, I think it's corn again this year. The whole field is beautiful, and now the road's gone. The demolition waste road is gone. So you can farm the whole field again, which is what's happening. Behind the barn is a pile of rubble about the same height as the barn. And the best guess we have is they're gonna permit a mansion somewhere on that property, a mega mansion, and the rubble will become part of the fill as the base of the mansion. You know, but there's stated purpose of saving farmland, which most of them say they want to do. I don't see how you do that by allowing 10,700 square foot mansions on farmland.
So we've got a lot of problems, and the mansions right now are the key problem, because they're alienating all of the remaining Richmond farmland from proper agriculture.
This is actually a 10-acre farm, so the properties on either side of it are smaller, and this property has a small frontage and then a large 10-acre field in the back that's leased out to a vegetable farmer. They're applying to have the roadside stand removed. The roadside stand zoning was put in place after the house was built, so now it's zoned for roadside stand. So this house cannot be structurally altered, like it can't be torn down. It can be renovated, but it can't be structurally altered because it's like a covenant really, because it's got roadside stand. So that means that you can sell your produce directly from the farm, right? So this is a 10-acre piece of Class 1 clay property. It was farmed for many, many years, and the farmers retired and had to sell. And the person who bought it obviously didn't buy it to be a farmer because they've been trying to sell it. They've been trying to flip it for the last year. And I guess it's not selling because you can't build a mansion on it because of this roadside stand zoning. So they're currently trying to remove the roadside stand zoning so that they're going to be able to build. And the plans are for an 11,000 square foot mansion. And if you go around to the other side, you can see the amazing barns and stuff that this property has. It's all set up, like it's all set up for an amazing farm operation. It's just that generational gap that we have in young farmers coming in and older farmers having to retire have left quite a bit of a lull in farming, where it didn't seem like anybody was going to take over farming. And I think a lot of farmers felt really hopeless about that because there was no one to sell their farm to that wasn't a speculator. So they bought this property for $4.2 million for 10 acres. So that's under $400,000 an acre. And they immediately tried to sell it the following year for $6.8 million, and it didn't sell for a whole year. So people obviously did their homework and realized they couldn't develop on it. And yeah, so I don't know. I don't know what their intentions are or what they knew or what they didn't know, but the fact is this property can't be developed, and so it hasn't been able to be sold. The way it stands right now, this would be a pretty good farm for somebody to get into. I mean, 10 acres for $4 million isn't too unreasonable considering today's market. But now properties on this street are listed for $10 million for 10 acres. So in just a couple of years, that was 2016 that this was $4.2 million. And now we just started 2018 and 10 acres is listed for $10 million.
With no house?
With no house. It's over twice the price of this property.
I started to track the property when my wife first noticed that it was just farmland with a couple of markers. And I kind of dismissed it. They're not going to build a house there. I had started noticing shortly after we moved to the area about 9 years ago that houses were starting to be built in these. And then you saw they bring in the top-loaded soil for the foundation. So I just started, out of curiosity, photographing it as it was going up. I'm assuming, since it's registered as an 18-acre farm, that there is land that's being farmed around the back that is part of this property. The landlord, whoever that is, has never lived there. I think the house was built on speculation because in the probably 4 to 5 years that it's been finished, no one has ever lived in it. And I can pretty much guarantee that. Gardeners come and go, so that's a bit deceiving. I did notice it in the MLS listings. Let's see, that was a year and a half ago for, I think then it was 18 million. Never see the garbage cans out, no.
No,
No.
and you've lived here for as long
I
as
drive,
this
this
house.
is how I drive to Steveston, and
Okay.
I've noticed it, yeah. And I took pictures during the whole construction phase, right up to completion, and now you can't really see the house anymore. The land that the house sits on and the home footprint, that is taxed like a residential property tax. But the backlands, the farmlands, they get a tax break, a good tax break on the farmlands, but only if it's farmed. Some people say that these houses are built the last 10 years. They're really not very, very permanent, and it's just a way to establish a building on the land with the hopes that someday, when British Columbia gets a new, more corporate government again, the farmland will all be taken out and they can build tracts of condos on here. I know there's properties in the ALR that people from overseas have purchased with the assumption, and they've said it, and it's been obviously has been suggested to them by the realtor when they were looking at the land that they could one day, quite possibly, very likely, who knows, build a bunch of condos on the farmland behind mansion, if you want to call it a mansion. They're not all enormous, but this is a kind of like a, what would you call that? I guess I would call it pissing on the land for, you know, for just kind of establishing yourself, and then you wait it out, and you or your family, whatever, can proceed once the ALR becomes even weaker. I don't think it's going to happen. I think we're at the point now where people are too aware of that kind of thing, and the government is way too sensitive. The provincial government, that is.